Well, hi, welcome back to Doc's Projects. This project was a real fun one to do. Hopefully if you follow along the steps, I'll show you exactly how to do this. Nice epoxy coating on top of this countertop here, so next to the barbecue. Set my things out here. It's beautiful, so stick around and I'll show you step by step how to do this the proper way. And also, if you stick around to the end of the video, I've got a whole bunch of tips that are going to help you to avoid disasters. So stick around for that. Please don't forget to subscribe and like, and let's take a look and see how I did this, start to finish. Well, hi, welcome to Doc's Projects. Here's my next project that we're going to do today, this weekend I should say. I have a countertop here that had some cracks in it. I had mortar on it before. After a couple of years it decided to start cracking as it sifted a little bit. So once it's nice and settled, then I took some feather cement. You can get a sack of, it's a special type of feather cement that you can mix up, and you can lay it out, and you can go as thin as a 1/16 of an inch. I decided to go with about an 1/8 of an inch. Covered over the whole thing to fill in where the cracks were, make it nice and smooth again. And then I took a sander, sanded it down to where it's nice and smooth. Okay, so as you can see, I have just some saran wrap put on here with tape around it. I've got another one over on the other side that you probably saw. The idea behind this is, if you're going to be putting epoxy over cement or concrete or anything porous like this, you have to make sure that it's absolutely dry. And I'm not sure if this is dry or not. So a trick, what you can do, take some saran wrap or some clear plastic like that, something similar, tape it down, let it sit for a while, and if there's any moisture in the cement or concrete or whatever it is you're working with, it'll show up in here. The moisture will come up, and this will kind of draw it up, and it'll be like a humid, sticky moisture in here. So I'm going to let it sit on here for a little while, make sure that it's nice and dry, because if I was to pour epoxy over this and there's still moisture down inside the cement, it would just bubble up and make a big mess. So stand by, we'll get to the next step, and you'll get to see as we're taping up the outside edges, removing this, of course, if it's dry enough, and we'll get ready to put the first layer of epoxy down. First layer, because this is so porous, the first layer of epoxy I'll put down with a roller, and I'll make it real thin. I'll put it out real thin. That'll soak into some of those pores. Once it becomes solid, I'll be able to sand it down smooth. I might even have to put a second layer down because it's so porous I'll still have bubbles coming up. Once I'm to that point, I'll put the final top coat on, and you'll get to see every step that I go through as we happen to make this thing happen, and we'll hopefully come out with something pretty. So stay tuned, go have a sandwich, and for me it'll be a few hours, for you it'll seem like a few seconds. Well, okay, it's been a few hours. I'm out here checking it. No signs of moisture, so I'll be able to pull these up. So here's what I'm going to be doing. I've got a lot of pieces of cardboard from some boxes laying around. I'm going to be putting those around the floor to make sure that any spillage doesn't get on the cement and lock in. So I'll be pulling up this tape. I'm going to be using a little thin roller along with this as I mix this up. I'm mixing this up into the cup. One thing to keep in mind, for outdoors, to keep it from yellowing, you want to make sure that you get UV type. You want to make sure that you got the UV type of epoxy. These mix volume to volume, 1 to 1. So I've got the resin, which is part A, the hardener, which is part B. Now, you might notice that I've got this blue tape going around the outside. I put 2 or 3 layers, depending on where it is, to make sure that it's nice and stiff. I don't want it to be too floppy. So this first coat that I put in, I'm not going to go over the edge on the sides just yet. I'm just going to put it on the top to give a nice surfacing to it. Once I'm done with that and I put the next coat on, that coat will be a little bit thicker. I'll bring it up to the edge, and once it gets a little bit thicker, so it's not so watery, I want it to where it doesn't flow so fast, then I can take off this tape, let it flow over the sides. That's why I'm going to have all kinds of cardboard down around the bottom, because there's going to be a lot of drips. Of course, I know what I'm doing. I watched a YouTube channel, and now I'm making a YouTube channel, so stay tuned. Okay, here we go. Equal parts, so I've got 2 cups here. Stir sticks. Now this is best to do when it's warm. When it's real cold out in the wintertime, it's kind of kind of hard to set things up. Okay, so the reason you saw we went back and forth with those other cups is because there's always a little bit of residual of each A and B, and I wanted to make sure to get it all incorporated, all of it in there. So this is about ready now. Like I say, I'm going to push this out to be very thin, and then we'll just use the roller to spread it around. So you can see that's looking like it's smoothing out pretty nice. Actually better than I expected. So I'm going to let this cure. I'll hit it with the torch a few more times, get rid of the bubbles, and then we'll come back and get ready for the next step. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I appreciate it. It helps me to put more of these helpful videos together so that you can find out how to do stuff as well. Okay, well, it's the next day, and I can see that there's a couple little spots here and there, but I'm going to be sanding this whole thing down because for the second coat I've got to make sure that I've got a good place for it to adhere to. Okay, well, we're just about ready to do the final coat. At least I hope it's the final coat. I'm going to sand this whole thing down. So what you're going to need a sander, of course. I would recommend 120 or 180 grit to start with. For some of the real rough spots, a little bit more like an 80 to really rough it up. You want to make sure that you got a good bite on it. Clean towel. Isopropyl alcohol is real good, so once you're all done with it and you want to wipe it down before the next pour, use this and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Spread it around, wipe it down real good, and hopefully this comes out really, really nice. Now you might be wondering about this alcohol. This is the case that really screws up and there's no turning back. So I might just have to no, but hell no. Look what's on your apron. Trust in the process. You saw a YouTube video. I guess I just have to trust in the procedure. Okay, so back to just the isopropyl alcohol, and I better make sure that it turns out nice. We'll see in a little while. I've got 4 different colors. I've got white, light blue, dark blue, and a little bit of purplish. And mix those together. These are already warmed up. Put them in some warm water for a while. Okay, now, I don't know how easy this is going to be to pour, so I'm going to put this in here and try to pour some in there. Oops. Okay, ready for the fun. Here we go. I can tell where it's a little bit thicker, so I can push it on down. Looking pretty wild, eh? Okay, there's our colors. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you subscribed. Fun stuff. Okay, well, for those of you that stayed around to the end, as promised, I was going to give you some helpful tips on how to do a project like this, the safest and easiest way that you can, and how to be prepared. So let's get on with my promise. First off, to be successful with epoxy, number one, read the label carefully because there's different kinds of epoxies. There's the tabletop, which is thin pores multiple times. There's the deep pores, where you pour just once, up to 2 inches thick. There's UV protection type, which is pretty much for anything that you're going to do outdoors, such as this. The UV ultraviolet has some protection that helps to minimize the yellowing that happens over several years of sun exposure and etc. Work in a warm environment. I prefer it to at least 70 degrees. I like to preheat the epoxy in hot water. I take the tubs and I put them in the sink with some hot water for a little while just to warm them up as well. Makes it a lot easier for pouring and mixing. If you're going to be using a mold or a frame or something, or might be putting some wood into a frame and going to pour into it to make a tabletop like a river with wood, make sure that you seal up everything. The corners of the framework, make sure that you've got some silicone seal in there to make sure it doesn't run out. And if you got a wood surface or a cement surface or rocks or something like that that might be porous, make sure you seal them up with like a polyurethane. Very important, be prepared with all the tools. Have them all laid out, accessible, ready to go. I'm going to put up a list of what the list is, but I'll read it here for you as well. You want to make sure that your cordless drill battery is fully charged because you're going to be using that for mixing, unless you're using a paddle. But if you're using a drill with a paddle, make sure the battery doesn't die on you halfway through. You're going to need cups, tubs, mixing sticks, and paddles if you're using a drill press or drill. You want a roller brush, a regular brush, painter's tape, silicone seal for the molds, a level. Make sure everything's perfectly level where you're going to be. Your choice of color can be either liquid or powder types. I prefer the powder type only because they both have the color, but the powder type you have to mix a little bit more, but it's got these little tiny particles in there, and when you lay it out, it has a kind of a neat look to it. You can actually get it where it's starting to gel up a little bit. You can kind of swirl it, and those swirl marks will stay evident, which can be kind of attractive, especially if it's an ocean scene or a river. Give that some thought. Okay, disposable gloves, very important. Safety glasses, dust mask, torch or heat gun, isopropyl alcohol, acetone. Acetone's really good for cleaning the tools in your hands that get stuck and stuff. Toothpicks, and plenty of time. Don't rush this. Make sure you have plenty of time, because once you pour it, you're going to spend a few hours observing, checking, heating it up with a torch or something. If something happens to get stuck in it, an insect or a piece of dust, you use a piece of toothpick to pop it out. During the first 30 minutes after you pour it, it should still self-heal itself. So wherever you pop something out, it'll smooth it over. Decide on your colors ahead of time. Put the colors in the various cups for the different colors you're going to use, and then the epoxy, after you mix it up, pour it in on top of that and mix it up for about a minute until it's nice and thoroughly mixed in. After the pour and smoothing, after you've brushed it out, smoothed it out, and then kind of leave it alone, you want to use a torch or a heat gun carefully to burst the bubbles. Don't get the torch too close to where it flames up. Just want enough heat to kind of cause those bubbles to rise and burst, and then they level themselves out. Finally, let it cure for a minimum of 24 hours before you start touching it and doing stuff. So it's better to wait for at least 48 hours before you start doing anything like that. If you come across and you find there's a little imperfections on it, don't panic too much. After a few days where it's nice and hard, then you can sand it down and prepare it to bring it back to the nice gloss that you want. When you go to sand it, if it's only been a day or two, it's going to be kind of gummy. As you start to get into it, you're just going to plug up your sandpaper with gummy material, and it's nasty. So let it dry at least 3 or 4 days before you start doing any kind of sanding on it. Being outdoors, it's hard to protect it from the elements. Bugs are going to get into it, things are going to happen. But just be prepared, it's a way to fix it. And I believe that's about it. So I hope you find these tips helpful. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to leave any comments, I appreciate it. If you've got any questions, I try to see all the comments and questions. I'll answer them as soon as I can. And aside from that, thanks so much for watching. If you want to hit that little bell button down there, that means every time I create a new video and put it online, it'll just send you a little text letting you know there's a new one to watch if you want to. So appreciate it. Thanks for subscribing, and God bless you.